Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said I always wanted touch. Said it like an accusation. Like I was asking for something unreasonable. Too much presence. Too much closeness. Too much me. I remember nodding, because nodding is what I do when I'm still processing data. I remember thinking she didn't understand the irony. She worked through touch. Lived by it. Trusted it. But with me, she wanted distance. Space. Silence. So I gave her space. Just not the way she expected. My name is Ethan Cole. I build systems that notice what everyone else ignores. I work in cybersecurity, the kind where nothing flashy happens unless you fail. I monitor boundaries. Access. Patterns that look harmless until they aren't. Control isn't about force. It's about absence. About knowing when to pull something away and watching what collapses without it. That night, after she said it, I didn't argue. I went for a drive instead. Took the Camry through side streets until my hands stopped shaking. I ended up at a Dunkin', sitting in the car with a burnt coffee, watching the drive-through clock tick down seconds I couldn't get back. She didn't text. That told me more than any explanation would have. We used to spend Saturdays at Costco. That was our ritual. Oversized carts, arguments about cereal, pretending bulk purchases meant stability. Lately, she went alone, said my energy stressed her out. Too much awareness. Too much noticing. She'd come home lighter somehow, phone face down, shoulders loose, like she'd been handled gently by the world. She's a physical therapist. Her entire career is built on trust through hands. I respected that. I stayed in my lane. I asked before I touched her arm. I waited for signals. I learned restraint the way some men learn dominance. And somewhere in that silence, someone else stepped in. Someone who didn't ask. Someone who touched because touching was his job, his currency, his shortcut. I didn't know his name yet. I only knew the shift. The recalibration. The way she flinched when I reached for her and relaxed when her phone buzzed. The way she complained about closeness but smelled like someone else's routine. That night, lying next to her, inches apart like strangers sharing a bench, I made a decision. Not emotional. Structural. I stopped reaching. Stopped initiating. Stopped asking. Not as punishment. As an experiment. She rolled over, satisfied with the quiet. She thought she'd won space. She didn't realize I'd already started removing myself from the system. The first thing I removed wasn't physical. It was digital. That's always where you start if you want to see the truth without interference. I stopped syncing my calendar to hers. Deleted the shared reminders we'd built over years. Appointments. Birthdays. The quiet scaffolding of a marriage that runs on notifications. I didn't announce it. Systems don't announce changes. They just stop responding. She noticed the silence before she noticed me. That's how it works now. People feel absence in the tools first. She missed a reminder for her continuing education class and blamed her phone. I watched her troubleshoot, reset passwords, reauthorize access, all muscle memory. None of it worked. I'd revoke permissions cleanly. No alerts. No friction. Just gone. At work, I slept in my chair between monitoring windows. Nights stretched. Mornings blurred. I'd stop by Dunkin' on the way home. Same order, same nod from the guy behind the counter who didn't know my name but recognized my eyes. That was enough. I didn't bring the coffee inside anymore. I drank it in the car, watching the house through the windshield, learning its patterns from the outside. She filled the quiet with Netflix. Always something light. Background voices meant to soften the edges. I could tell when she was alone by the volume. Too loud. Competing with thoughts. I stayed upstairs, logged in, invisible. I closed access to the shared streaming profile one night, just to see what would happen. She created a new one without asking. That told me everything. The trainer entered the data set slowly. Same time blocks. Same days. The gym across the park. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. Trust is a vulnerability, and she handed it to someone whose job was to exploit comfort through repetition. He wasn't special. He was available. Proximity does the rest. She started coming home with a different posture. Looser. Grounded in a way that wasn't hers. She stopped flinching when I passed by because I'd stopped reaching. She mistook that for relief. Space granted. Complaint resolved. That weekend would have been Costco, but she went alone again. Came back with fewer bags and more certainty. She moved through the kitchen like I was furniture. Temporary. Replaceable. I cataloged it all, not with anger, but precision. That night, lying awake, I made the next cut. I logged into our shared storage and archived years into cold folders only I could see. Photos. Documents. Quietly partitioned. I wasn't erasing history. I was isolating it. She slept easily beside me, thinking the distance meant peace. I was already building the exit. By the third day, she started testing the boundaries. Not with words, with presence. Lingering in doorways. Standing too close in the kitchen. Brushing past me without looking up, like muscle memory reaching for something it no longer owned. I stayed neutral. Still, systems don't react to noise. They log it. She asked if something was wrong without actually asking. Her tone carried the question, soft but irritated, like static under calm music. I answered with behavior instead of language. I stopped sharing locations. Disabled the Cars app connection. Turned off read receipts everywhere. I didn't block her. I just became unreachable in places she expected access. That night, she fell asleep on the couch with Netflix playing, the glow painting her face blue and detached. I watched from the hallway for a moment, noticing how comfortable she looked alone. Not lonely. Occupied. That was the tell. People who are cheating don't look guilty when they think they're free. They look relieved. The confirmation didn't come through a message or a slip. It came through routine. She started showering twice a day. Once before work, once after the gym. She stopped using the good towels. Left them damp, rushed. She changed playlists. Faster tempos. Shorter songs. Touch without intimacy always leaves a rhythm behind. I didn't confront her. Confrontation is inefficient. It gives the other party time to adapt. Instead, I went to Best Buy on my lunch break and replaced a few things quietly. New router. New drives. Clean hardware. I boxed the old ones later at home, labeled them in my head, not with ink. She didn't notice the blinking lights had changed color. That weekend, she went to Costco again. Texted that she'd be late. I didn't reply. I spent the afternoon walking through the house, measuring what was mine and what was shared only by habit. The walls felt temporary already, like a rental you've mentally vacated before the lease ends. When she got home, she smelled like detergent and someone else's cologne masked badly with citrus. She leaned in for a kiss out of routine. I turned my head without drama. No tension, just misalignment. Her eyes flickered. Confusion before offense. That night, she slept deeply. I didn't. I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug I hadn't refilled, mapping the final steps. I wasn't leaving yet. That comes later. First, you remove the expectation of touch. Then the expectation of response. She thought she wanted space from closeness. She had no idea how quiet space can get when it's engineered. By midweek, the house started behaving differently. Not because anything moved, but because expectations had been removed. She still walked through rooms like I'd follow. I didn't. She still paused after sentences like I'd fill the space. I didn't. Silence, when it's intentional, has weight. It presses back. I stayed another night without touching her. Not by discipline, by design. She shifted closer in her sleep, then caught herself and rolled away, offended by her own instinct. In the morning, she lingered in the doorway while I put on my jacket, waiting for a question I didn't ask. I left with a quiet click of the door and drove to Dunkin' again, because repetition keeps the hands steady. At work, I rerouted the last shared accounts. Utilities. Cloud backups. The invisible things couples forget are joints, not luxuries. I didn't cut power. I transferred ownership. When systems change hands, nothing breaks immediately. That's the point. Breakage reveals itself later, when no one remembers who used to fix it. That afternoon, I went to Home Depot. Not in a rush. I walked the aisle slowly, choosing boxes that folded clean and tape that didn't scream when pulled. Practical things. Neutral colors. Tools for quiet exits. I stacked them in the garage where she wouldn't notice. She never went in there anymore. Said it smelled like oil and dust. Said it wasn't her space. That night, she asked if I was mad. Not directly. She asked if I was tired. I nodded. True enough. She mentioned the gym casually, like a weather update. New programming. A trainer who really understood bodies. She said it with a smile meant to sound harmless. I logged the smile. It didn't reach her eyes. She watched Netflix later, volume low this time. Testing. Waiting for commentary. I stayed upstairs, scrolling through nothing, letting the distance settle into its final shape. She fell asleep mid-episode. I didn't carry her to bed. That would have been touch. That would have been reassurance. The next morning, she woke irritated. Not angry. Disoriented. Like someone who expects gravity and doesn't feel it immediately. She dressed carefully, slower than usual. Left without a goodbye. I heard the door close and didn't check the time. That evening, I made the decision permanent. I scheduled the last transfers, set delayed confirmations, and placed the first sealed box in the trunk of the car. No rush. No announcement. She wanted space from closeness. She was about to learn the difference between distance and removal. By the 5th day, she stopped pretending nothing had changed. The questions came out sideways. Comments about energy. About how quiet the house felt. She said it like an observation, not an invitation. I acknowledged it by continuing exactly as I was. Consistency is how you let someone realize a pattern isn't accidental. I stayed in the house another week on purpose. That part mattered. Disappearing too fast feels like drama. Staying while becoming unreachable is what unsettles people. She could see me, hear me, but she couldn't feel me anymore, and that gap confused her more than anger ever would have. She started checking her phone more often when I was nearby. Small glances. Adjustments. Her screen lighting up face down on the counter. I never looked. Knowing without confirming keeps the mind clean. I already had what I needed. Patterns don't lie when they repeat. One evening she came home late, smelling like the gym and someone else's hands. Not perfume. Detergent. That neutral smell people use when they think it hides everything. She showered immediately and left her clothes in a heap. I noticed she'd stopped wearing the ring. Said it caught on equipment. Practical excuse. Predictable. That night, I closed the last shared device permissions. Phones. Tablets. The TV she controlled from her screen. I'd already migrated my own subscriptions days earlier, so nothing cut out mid-use. No confrontation. No flicker of blame. Just a slow realization that things no longer responded to her the way they used to. She noticed it with Netflix first. Her profile gone. History empty. She assumed a glitch. Restarted the app. Then the modem. Then the router. She asked if I'd touched anything. I said no, which was true in the way systems allow truth to be flexible. The following morning, I went back to Home Depot for more boxes. She watched from the kitchen this time. Didn't ask what they were for. Didn't need to. People feel abandonment before it's announced. Her body already knew something was ending. I packed only my things. Books I'd brought into the marriage. Drives she'd never seen. Clothes that still felt like mine. I left shared items untouched. Letting them remain is a form of closure. It says this was never about punishment. That night, she sat close on the couch, closer than she had in months. Her knee brushed mine. An experiment. I didn't move. Didn't lean in. Didn't pull away. Neutral space is harder to fight than rejection. She wanted touch without accountability. I was preparing to remove myself completely. The shift came when she tried to pull me back without saying my name. That's how she always did it. She started moving through the house louder. Cabinets closed harder. Music played longer. She needed friction to prove something was still there to resist. I stayed calm. Presence without response feels like standing in a room where the echo never returns. She tested touch again, lightly this time. Fingers brushing my wrist as she passed. Not intimacy. Calibration. I didn't react. Not because I was numb, but because I was precise. Touch only matters when it's exclusive. Otherwise, it's noise. That night, she didn't turn on Netflix. She sat in the dark on the couch, phone in hand, screen lighting her face in quick bursts. Waiting. Measuring. When I went upstairs, she followed slowly, not to talk, but to confirm I still slept there. I did. That mattered. The system wasn't broken yet. Just reconfiguring. The next morning, she asked if I was still coming to her sister's birthday. She framed it like logistics. I said I wasn't sure. That was the first uncertainty I'd given her in years. She stared at me longer than necessary, like she was trying to read a screen that no longer refreshed. I spent that afternoon at Best Buy again, returning something I didn't need. A clean exit doesn't require excess. On the way home, I sat in the car for a while, engine off, just listening to the quiet. The house looked smaller from the driveway, less permanent, like it had already started forgetting me. When I walked in, she was standing in the kitchen holding her phone, frozen mid-scroll. She looked up too fast. The trainer's name flashed briefly before the screen went dark. Not guilt, not panic, just interruption. She said something about dinner. I nodded and went upstairs. That evening, I removed myself from the last family chat. No announcement, no exit message, just absence. I watched the typing bubbles appear and disappear later from another room. She didn't come upstairs. She waited. Silence can feel like punishment when you're used to response. I packed the rest of my clothes quietly, folding them the way I always had. Muscle memory doesn't disappear just because affection does. I left the ring on the dresser. Not dramatic, just accurate. She finally knocked on the door after midnight. Soft, careful, the knock of someone who knows the answer but hopes for an override. I didn't open it. She wanted space from touch. She was starting to feel what space really means when it has no signal. The morning after the knock, she didn't mention it. That told me more than if she had. People who feel control slipping avoid naming it. Naming makes it real. She moved through the house carefully, like she was in someone else's space. I stayed ordinary. Showered, dressed, left for work at the same time. Stability can be the sharpest contrast. I stopped by Dunkin' again, not because I needed caffeine, but because routine keeps the body calm when the mind is finalizing something irreversible. I sat in the car afterward, watching condensation fade on the windshield, thinking about how many mornings we'd shared by accident. Same house, same time, different lives. When I got home, the garage door was open. She'd gone in there for the first time in months. Boxes stacked neatly where I'd left them. She hadn't opened any, just counted. Inventory is the first instinct of someone who senses loss but doesn't yet understand its scope. She tried again that night, not with touch, but with proximity. Sat at the table while I ate. Asked about work in a tone meant to sound neutral. I answered with facts only. No commentary. No invitation. She nodded too much, like she was trying to keep pace with something already moving past her. Later, I finalized the last digital cut. I removed myself from shared photo access completely. Not deleted, just unreachable. Years of images now lived in partitions she couldn't see. I knew the exact moment she discovered it. The house went very still. Netflix didn't turn on that night. She paced instead. Soft steps. Stops and starts. She stood outside the bedroom door again, longer this time. I stayed silent. Silence isn't passive when it's deliberate. It's a statement without risk. The next morning, I loaded the car before sunrise. Not everything, just enough. I didn't leave a note. Notes are explanations. I'd already given her exactly what she'd asked for. I stayed gone all day. No check-ins. No shared location. When I came back that evening, the house felt different. Lighter. Emptier. She looked at me like I was already a memory. Not angry. Uncertain. Like she'd misjudged the weight of something and couldn't lift it back. I slept there one last night. Not beside her. On the couch. Neutral ground. Transitional space. In the morning, I left again. This time with the rest. She wanted space from touch. I was about to give her a kind of distance she couldn't scroll past. I didn't move far at first. Distance isn't measured in miles. It's measured in access. I stayed local, rented a quiet place with neutral walls and no shared history. The car felt different without her bag on the floor, without her playlists auto-starting. Just engine noise and my own breathing. That was enough. The first thing I did after unpacking was finish the digital erasure. Not dramatic. Thorough. I changed numbers she didn't know existed. Migrated authentication keys. Shut down shared recovery emails. I left one channel open on purpose. Not to talk. To let the silence arrive slowly, like pressure equalizing. She noticed within hours. I know because the notifications spiked. Missed calls. Login attempts. Password resets she couldn't complete. She tried the old backups first, then the newer ones. When those failed, she went social. Messages framed as concern, not panic. That stage never lasts. I stopped at Dunkin' that night out of habit, sat in the car, watched people come and go with lives that didn't overlap mine. The coffee tasted the same. Consistency matters when everything else is final. She escalated the next day. Not with accusations. With nostalgia. Photos she suddenly could access again because she'd saved them locally. Memories framed as questions. I didn't open them. Opening is participation. I'd already left the system. That evening, she watched Netflix alone in a house that finally understood it was empty. I know because the profile activity timestamped itself, still tied to an account I hadn't fully decommissioned yet. One last breadcrumb. One last illusion of togetherness. I let that run for 2 days. Then I closed it. Clean. No error message. Just a prompt to sign in that never resolved. She called immediately after. Left a voicemail I didn't listen to. Voice carries too much context. Text is cleaner. I muted it all. By the end of the week, she tried practical questions. Bills. Logistics. The language of necessity. I forwarded what mattered through a neutral channel. No commentary. No warmth. Just resolution. I went back once, early, to collect the last things. She wasn't home. The house felt like a set after filming wraps. Familiar but irrelevant. I took nothing extra. Left the keys where she'd find them without searching. Driving away, I didn't look back. Not because it hurt. Because the system was already closed. She asked for space from touch. What she got was the absence of presence, engineered quietly and permanent. The silence didn't hit her all at once. It came in layers. First the inconvenience, then the confusion, then the realization that inconvenience wasn't the problem at all. I know because the attempts changed shape. They stopped being frequent and started being careful. Fewer messages, longer gaps, like she was rationing hope. I settled into my new routine without ceremony. Work, sleep, early mornings, late nights when needed. Control returned quietly, the way it always does when variables are removed. I stopped at Dunkin' less often, not because I didn't need it, but because I didn't need the ritual anymore. Stability had moved inside. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. Not nostalgia. Analysis. I logged into a dormant account I'd left untouched, just to observe. She'd posted a photo from the gym. Nothing explicit. Just a mirror shot. Caption about strength. About starting over. The trainer was cropped out, but his presence was obvious in the framing. People always leave evidence when they want to be seen. What followed wasn't what she expected. The likes plateaued. The comments stayed shallow. No one filled the gap I'd left. Physical attention doesn't translate well when the system that held everything else together is gone. Touch without context decays quickly. She tried once more, weeks later. A message stripped of subtext. Not apology. Not blame. Just a statement about missing how safe things used to feel. Safety is what people name when they finally understand what they broke. I read it without emotion and archived it. Response would have been cruelty disguised as kindness. I heard through mutual noise that the trainer lost interest. Proximity fades when there's nothing to push against. She'd mistaken novelty for permanence. That's a common error. Bodies age. Systems endure. I drove past the old house once, unintentionally. Construction trucks lined the street. Someone new remodeling what used to be shared space. Home Depot signs out front. Cardboard and dust. Renewal without memory. It felt appropriate. That night, I watched something on Netflix for the first time in weeks. Not to fill silence. To enjoy it. The difference matters. I turned it off halfway through and slept deeply. She would eventually understand. Not the affair. Not the leaving. The absence. The way I didn't fight for touch because touch wasn't the currency. Presence was. And she'd spent it elsewhere. I didn't take revenge. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain myself. I just stopped existing where she expected to feel me. Some people think space is freedom. They don't realize how loud emptiness gets when it's permanent. The final cut wasn't dramatic. It never is. There was no confrontation, no last conversation meant to tie things up neatly. Closure is a myth people use when they're afraid of unfinished silence. I let the system stay unfinished on her end. That was the point. Weeks passed, then months. My life stabilized into something quieter than before, but stronger. Mornings came without negotiation. Nights didn't carry tension. I didn't miss the house. I didn't miss the routine. I missed nothing that required effort to maintain. That's how I knew the decision had been clean. I ran into her once by accident. Not face to face. Digitally. A calendar glitch from an old professional contact synced an outdated event. Her name surfaced for half a second, then disappeared again. Even the systems were letting go now. I didn't correct it. I let it resolve itself. She tried one last time after that. Not directly. Through a shared acquaintance who framed it as concern. Said she seemed lost. Said she didn't understand how it all ended without a fight. I understood perfectly. Fighting would have meant we were still negotiating value. We weren't. I heard she'd redecorated the house. New paint. New furniture. Home Depot runs on weekends again, trying to overwrite muscle memory with fresh surfaces. That works for a while, until the quiet sets in and there's no one left to absorb it. I stopped by Dunkin' one morning out of habit and realized I didn't need it anymore. The coffee wasn't anchoring anything now. I threw it out half full and didn't feel wasteful. Some things serve their purpose, and then they don't. One night, I turned on Netflix and let it play in silence while I worked. Not as background noise for loneliness, as proof that the room belonged to me. I turned it off before the episode ended. Control isn't about finishing what someone else started. She complained I wanted too much touch, that it overwhelmed her, that she needed space to breathe. I gave her exactly what she asked for, just structured correctly. Not absence as a threat. Absence as a permanent condition. I didn't disappear to hurt her. I disappeared because systems don't beg to be valued. They withdraw access. Some people mistake touch for intimacy. Others understand that presence, once removed, never grows back. And that silence, when engineered properly, doesn't echo. It settles. Been through it. When they crossed a line, and you made sure they felt it.